You're listening to Speaking Sidemount, the podcast where we talk all things sidemount diving, from equipment, skills, techniques, and sidemount diving expeditions to interviews with some of the world's top sidemount divers. Whether you're new to sidemount, been sidemount diving for years, or just want to know more, this is the place for all things sidemount. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Let's get wet.
Hey, welcome back to Speaking Sidemount. I'm Steve Davis. This episode is brought to you by our brilliant sponsor X-Deep and by the patrons of Speaking Sidemount. Huge thanks to both for their support that makes everything you're about to listen to possible. Now, if you'd like to support the show and become a patron for as little as $5 per month and get early access to every episode plus other benefits, pop on over to www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount for all of the details. It's been a dark week for the global diving community with the tragic passing of Dive Right General Manager Jared Hires. The outpouring of grief and glowing tributes are testament to the impact that Jared had on both diving, but also as a friend, a husband, father, and son. I sadly never had the opportunity to meet Jared, and I'm the poorer for it, but from me personally and on behalf of the Speaking Sidemount community, I pass on my sincere condolences to Jared's family and many friends. Rest in peace, Jared. Now, I've spoken many times on this show of how I got started in sidemount diving. Steve Bogart's Ponderosa Skills video was the trigger, but very quickly after that, I found Steve Martin's website. He was the first to promote the benefits of sidemount diving to a global audience. His content, images, and video were incredibly compelling and form the basis of much of what you'll read to this very day about sidemount diving. While I didn't get the opportunity to personally complete a course with Steve, it was his recommendations and testimonials that led me to Tom Steiner and Gozo Technical Diving in Malta. I subsequently had the good fortune to meet and dive with Steve while I was working and training with Tom. Now, just a year or so later, Steve released his first online video training series. In my opinion, it was a watershed moment in sidemount diving. From the beginning, I was taken with a level of detail in each of the video modules, describing everything from setting up your harness, regulators and cylinders, to putting it in the water, with details on how to weight check properly, diver trim checks and fixes, propulsion training, base sidemount skills, and emergency drills. Over the subsequent years, Steve partnered with his former student, Vas Proud, to enhance and grow the online video training to the point today where it includes literally hundreds of hours of content, including Intro to Sidemount, Sidemount Essentials, Sidemount Instructor modules, and a whiteboard series covering a huge array of tech diving content, plus soon a cave diving series. Now, I've personally used the videos to not only improve my own sidemount diving, but also as a basis for my courses and instruction. It is, in my opinion, an essential part of any sidemount diver's toolkit. In this episode, which is part one of a two-part discussion with Steve and Vas, we go into their backgrounds, how the video series came about, the thinking behind it, and the benefits it provides, how the online video training compares and should be used, and we of course catch up and have a few laughs along the way. Now, as I've described, I'm an absolute advocate of the sidemounting.com online video training. I honestly believe it will help any sidemount diver or instructor to improve their diving, and as such, I've negotiated a special offer for all listeners of Speaking Sidemount. You can get a 15% discount on any of the training materials if you contact me directly for an exclusive promotional code. Now, this offer is only available via Speaking Sidemount, and again by contacting me personally via email to steve@sidemountpros.com. I'll put all those details in the podcast notes. Now, full disclosure, along with your discount, Speaking Sidemount will also benefit financially from every purchase generated, which will contribute to the ongoing production of this podcast. I sincerely appreciate your support. Now, let's get on with the show. Steve Martin and Vas Proud on sidemounting.com and their online video series.
And we are recording. Steve and Vas, welcome to Speaking Sidemount.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for having us.
It is phenomenal to have you both on here. And as you know, we've been trying to pull this together for years now. And so I'm absolutely over the moon that we've finally got a chance to talk, and to have you there, Vas, is just double the value. So thanks so much to both of you for your time. I think I saw you both in 2016 last, so it's been way too long.
Has it been that long?
I think so. And I still reminisce, Vas, about the dive that we did on Carwella after the storm. I don't know if you remember that.
That was the time you introduced me to the term honey badger.
Exactly.
Yeah, you had to explain what that meant.
Oh, man, that is a while ago, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's going back.
Awesome. Well, look, great to have you both on the show. And look, you're extremely well known in the Sidemount community, both for your Sidemount diving, but also your contributions to Sidemount education in particular. But I'm not really sure if many people know your own backgrounds in diving. So can we start out just to give the listeners a bit of a background on both of you, on how you got started in diving?
I mean, for me, it was really when I was at home as a kid. My dad was a diver. There was dive equipment around the house. So I was always curious about it. And probably at some point in my 20s, I tried to dive. From the first moment I went in the water and I thought, this is a different world that I'm in. I kind of knew I wanted to do more. And pretty much all my holidays switched just to going diving. And then it was probably around 15 years ago I realized that, I wanted to now teach diving. And that was then through taking the training for Dive Master, through instructing. And then just working in the UK, part-time, which turned into semi-time and then eventually full-time.
Yeah.
So it was a sort of slow migration. And the more you did, the more you wanted to do, if you like. Halfway through the story, that's where I met Steve. And, that kind of changed a little bit of the path that I was on. And I think since then, that's kind of really what's brought us here.
Yeah. And that was when you started Sidemount diving, Vas?
Yeah. So Steve actually did a try dive for me. That was up in the north of England at a UK site. First time, never tried it. I'd heard about it. My girlfriend was into it at the time. Thanks, Laura. And it was really just something completely different. No one in my club was doing it. Not that recreational diving was getting boring, but there's something else happening here, and I want to get looking into this.
Brilliant. And Steve?
Yeah, so for me, I guess the long story short is, I originally didn't want to teach anybody anything, actually. I left school. I wanted to do water skiing. Mm-hmm. And I found out that, if you taught people to do it, you could drive these really fast boats and get to ski every day. Yeah. I started down that process and I realized that actually I probably enjoyed the teaching people to ski more than I did actually doing it. And this is at 18 years old as well, so a dream job at that point. Luckily, a few years before that, I'd done my, learn to dive. So it was already there when I was 16. My dad got me into that. I remember going to many UK dive sites, helping carry his weight belt around. That seemed to be our job. And then what happened? Well, I got the bug for diving, but I think the main thing for me was the ability that diving happens all around the world. So the ability to travel was even more exciting for me. And I knew that already if I was teaching people something, well, I enjoy it, so I must enjoy that. I enjoy the traveling, and it just snowballed from there, right? Mm-hmm. If we're actually going to get into how I got into Sidemount, I guess I was very lucky to meet Steve Bogarts. I know he's been on your channel talking. Mm-hmm. Had an excellent cave training with him, several cave courses in the end. It was really that started me down the path of, Sidemount being a very different configuration or tool that lend itself well to my own diving improving. Mm. And then helping other people to do it just was a natural progression for me from that point.
Yeah, amazing story. And I tell the story a lot about how I got started in Sidemount, and it was around 2012, I think. And I'd been diving for a long time. I'm sort of a typical Kiwi crayfish hunter, which is, if you ask someone in New Zealand, if you're going diving, they say, what did you catch? It's all about hunting here. And I did that for a long, long time. And then I just thought, look, I've had enough of this. I really want to get better at diving. And I thought that was the dive master path. So I became a dive master, and I became what I would refer to as a better crap diver. Started to learn about teaching and all that, which was fine. But it was about the same time I just finished my dive master course, and I saw Steve Bogart's video in Ponderosa, which is pretty famous, of him doing the Sidemount skills. We've all seen it. And I thought, oh my God, what is that? That's just a different type of diving, different level. He was so relaxed, and trim, doing skills. It was brilliant. And then, funnily enough, Stephen, I don't give you enough credit for this, so I'm going to do it now. I found your website pretty much straight after that. And you were the first person that I had seen, and I think you were the first person to lay out all of the benefits of Sidemount diving. So you kind of had this 5 or 6 point list of better trim and balance, better access to equipment and valves, all of the benefits we know of Sidemount. And it was on your website.
He had diagrams of how a good side mount diver should be set up.
Sure.
Pretty sure it was 2012. And I thought, look, I really want to go and do that. And I did try to train with you. I don't know if you remember that too, but
I do, in Mexico.
Ended up training with Jason Renault and got a really good course with Jason as well. But that was my beginning. And so you deserve a lot of credit for that, because without seeing the path to actually some instruction, I probably never would have been able to pull it off. And of course, what are we now, 2024? So 11, 12 years later, here we are talking about side mount diving, still become a passion for me as it has for many people.
That is cool. It's been interesting. I mean, it was funny before I asked Vas, I was talking, and I said, how long has it been diving? And we're looking back, and I had to actually look it up myself a little bit, you know, because you forget the years. It's been a lot of years. Mm-hmm. And we worked out it's 20 years, I think, now for me teaching.
Yeah.
And then diving, I know, is quite a few more than that. So I don't even know where the years have gone, to be honest.
Yeah, it just flies by. Certainly, I've seen a lot of change in side mount from my early days. Here, 2013, I actually did the course, and I went back to the west coast of the US and started diving side mount. And of course, it was heresy doing what I was doing. Then I was diving out of boats, and I'm strong enough of character and personality that I didn't really give a shit, as I would say, that anybody else didn't think this was the right thing to do. As far as I was concerned, this was what I was going to do. And I was doing a lot of teaching myself, because Jason had taught me, obviously, in the caves of Mexico, where you have fresh water, 24 Celsius, wetsuit. And I went back to California, pretty cold water, 10 to 12 Celsius, dry suit, steel cylinders now. And I had to figure that all out for myself, because there was really no information available then about how you pull all this together. And through a lot of trial and error, I managed to gradually sort myself out until later on went to Gozo in 2015. So it took a wee while to get my act together, but did a lot of dives and did, of course, improve in that time. So it is interesting how side mount has changed from those early days where there was just a few people espousing the benefits, such as yourself. Then we saw that landslide happen. I think it was around that 13 to 16 period where side mount became really popular.
Sure.
Talk us through how you saw that period of growth in side mount and your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just two things I was going to say there. Interesting you mentioned the difference there from the wetsuit diving you did to the dry suit. And we were talking about this earlier, and we realized even ourselves, if you've been doing, even for us at this level, if you're diving one particular configuration like wetsuit for a while, and then you move to dry suit, but it's a very cold water, obviously you've probably got an idea what weight you need, but just putting those extra garments on, the thicker hood, the dry gloves, even for us, it takes like a couple of dives to adjust to that, right? So it does give me a lot of empathy for the students who need to do that as well. So again, I'd say always try and learn in as limited equipment as you can. And then, of course, once you've built the right skills, it's a bit easier to transition to thicker undergarments.
I mean, just slightly off the side of that, when you talked about the changes between what was going on back in the day versus what you're seeing now, and just that story you've told where you've learned in one configuration, you wouldn't have known about the others until you went and traveled and learned the others. So if I take a book, a manual that's written from someone in one part of the world, it doesn't always translate. So when you talk about finding people to teach you, well, those people probably should have had some of that experience.
Yeah.
We're lucky that we're able to go and get that for ourselves because we travel and that's how we pick it up.
Exactly.
But the difference, although it sounds small, it's not until you get in the water and realize how big that difference can be.
Yeah, it is so interesting. And I have had the benefit of being able to travel the world and dive in a lot of different environments, freshwater, saltwater, warm water. I don't go to too colder water. Probably the coldest is around that 8 degrees. So I haven't really done dry gloves. So that's kind of a gap in my knowledge and skill set. But one thing I have done is dive lots of different cylinder types. Most recently, I dived 40 cubic foot aluminiums, which was part of my Sidewinder setup. I usually like 50 cubic foot or 7 litre steels with it, but I had trimix in them, and of course I didn't want to use that on shallower dives. So I thought, all right, I'm going to grab these 40s and have a go. And then I had an issue with the Sidewinder, so I managed to just rip that off and just dived open circuit with these 2 40s. And it was so much fun. But it took me about 3 dives to dial the clocking of the cylinders correctly and get them to sit right. But when I got them right, they were right. It is so fun, I think, in my mind, to go through this different 12-litre steels, 11-litre aluminium or 80 cubic foot aluminium to 50s to 40s and knowing that you can make all of those work and still have great dives inside mount with redundancy and everything that brings. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and are you saying that 2014, 2016, or around 2013, you said, that was when Sidemount was becoming, certainly well more noticed. I think that was the time when you sort of bit the bullet and made the very first online training series at that point.
Right.
And then, obviously, the success of that in 2 years, decided to do the craziest thing ever, which was to restart it all, get Vas on board. And then 2016, we beat ourselves up big time for a year of filming. And then 2017, that series was released, which we've constantly grown then from there.
Yeah, brilliant. And I really want to get into that. And I do remember that period because, Steve, you disappeared from the face of the earth for about a year, I think, while you were doing that. Almost like, where's Steve gone? And no, I think he's working on something and nobody knew what. Before we go into the video, you're both dedicated instructors. And I know you have very particular philosophies around teaching, and you're both, I would say, professional educators in Sidemount diving would be a fair way to characterize, I think. So tell us a bit about your philosophy around teaching and how you see that diving should be taught.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll probably lead on that. And I think you have to start almost with the end in mind, when you begin. So if you know that you want to make a competent, skilled diver and you've got 4-5 days to do that, you need to use that time to drip feed the right things at the right time. And you want to make the path easy for them to get there. We don't want to turn it into a military style drill. You want to set people up for success rather than making them feel bad about that. And I think that, sure, we know all the things that we want them to do and we can all read those from standards and textbooks. But I think one of the kind of arts or the skills to it is to be able to deliver what that diver needs on that day. So I think there's a big human part. So, one thing I didn't talk about, I had some teaching experience when I was at college. I would assist some of the people that were working there. And again, you ran a business, I ran a business, and so you have staff training to do. Mm-hmm. So the idea of educating and sharing what you knew, but crucially trying to adapt your knowledge and the way your brain works to the way someone else works. And that for me, I found probably one of the most interesting things, because I don't give an explanation the same way all of the time. It's based on what kind of brain they have. Are they someone that learns better from this way or that way? So the whole thing for me, I tried to make it about them and not me. When I started teaching, I wanted to show off and look at me and yes, it's my turn to demo and all the rest of it. Whereas I don't care what my demo is now. I care how good you do it. That's what I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. So, for me, it's sort of almost taking myself out of that process and just being there to give that person what they need.
Right. Let me ask you a bit about that, because obviously it takes time for you actually to learn the learning style of your student.
Sure.
So I'm assuming this is happening on the first day or two of the course. You're watching them closely to see what they have or what they do?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, I ask people what do they do for a living. So you find out a little bit about, is it a technical job? Is it, just to get an idea. Mm-hmm. And usually you've had a few exchanges over email and you've gauged a little bit what kind of diving they've done and what do they know. And so straight away, based on a few questions, you start to get an idea a little bit how that works. But, it's not just how do they learn better. Is it learn by watching, learn by reading, learn by listening? It's also about, that empathy side of it. Someone that's not feeling good or they think they haven't done very well. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, I'm not going to spend 2 hours beating you up. You're beating yourself up. You don't feel great. So, my goal really is to take that out of the way. Let's do something you are good at. Let's have you finish on a high for today. Mm-hmm. Then we'll come back and chat a bit more about the problem for tomorrow. So, I don't know what you would call that, but for me, I call that the human empathy side of it.
Awesome. All right. Well, we started with the videos, and I can't say enough about the video series that you guys have created through sidemounting.com. Right from the very beginning, when I first saw them, you could see the amount of detail and care and effort that had gone into producing each of the videos, and the step-by-step nature of being able to take someone through every aspect. And there is a lot to sidemount diving. Definitely not as, I think, simple as backmount diving. And maybe that's a weakness, but in some ways it's also a strength, I think. So the amount of detail there, the way it was arranged in kind of a logical order, almost the workshops, a lot of which I've built into my own teaching now, and I'm sure a lot of others have in terms of the way you arrange courses. Steve, tell us a bit about why you did the video series, the reasons that you thought it was necessary, and what you hoped it would bring to Sidemount diving?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, people immediately think, oh, it's money, right? Or it's something else. How it all started really was, it goes back a little further. When I was first teaching people, I realized very early on that as an instructor, it's a good idea to reward the students that you're with. And of course, with Facebook growing and other things like that at the time, making an album at the end of their course, showing how cool they looked during their course, the fun they had, the things they learned, and then writing some comments about that in the description of the pictures and posting that album. That was great because then I got a lot of inquiries and a lot of other people wanted to join. So naturally I was doing more training. With GoPros then coming out, and we've got many, many versions of that now, these became these excellent tools that didn't distract you too much. You could run them all the time if necessary, or just record short bits, take screenshots from it, and still get those good end of course albums. But I think looking, right at that, so where was that peak moment? It was really that the students I was getting, you're repeating the same things quite a lot to them, like how to set the harness up. If they had their own harness already and they were bringing it, well, that's kind of a day lost to their training in a way, right? When I've got to configure it. What about if they could configure that harness really well before they came? And then it snowballed again. What about if they understood diver trim checks properly? If they understood how to correctly weight themselves? If they knew how to do the reg switches and they got to see some of the skills prior to coming, could they perform better during the course? And like I say, it snowballed from there. So I made the materials for the students, my future students I was going to get, right? It was nice to reward some of the ones who'd already been because they got to star in the new materials, and then the new ones were going to get to see it. Then, what happened next?
The point is that when you're teaching one course, you're in front of 1, 2, 3 divers. And, that you realise very quickly that you're not going to make a big dent in the dive industry if that's all you're going to do.
Yeah. And I think that the one thing I try and tell people is I use the SMB exercise as just a quick way to say it. If I was to try and teach you how to send up an SMB in different types, yes, I can do a live demonstration for you. I can do it in front of you. I can see what you've got and I can tell you how to do it in the water. I can even show you in the water how to do it. And let's just say that whole process would take about 15 minutes, right? If you take that lesson we made for 15 minutes, well, I'll just tell you now, that probably took about 4 or 5 days to make. So a 15-minute lesson, we'll come into how much is there, but it took that long. Now, that's because it does a much better job than I can ever do live. So it doesn't matter what day of the day you catch me, however good I am, how much awake I am, I can't do as good a job live as I can in the online series. And the simple reason is because it's already got me live, but it's got the best bits. It's got lots of student problems. It's got all the things that probably can go wrong. It educates you. It doesn't miss anything because it's been recorded and it's been looked at, it's been refined, and it's something you can digest in small segments. It might be that you're a little distracted as I'm talking to you live and you miss some key information. I mean, how often does that happen during courses? Quite a lot. So really, if you apply it to every single component of a Sidemount course, that's kind of the goal, where it kind of moved to.
I think if you just add to that, the student that's in front of you, they're going to take what they take, and the problems that they have, you're going to address them and you're going to solve them. But not every problem in the world will crop up on that course. So if you take, 100 courses over a 10-year period or whatever, you distill that into one lesson that's now the comprehensive lesson. If you watch that, you're going to get much more than you would have got in just your interaction for that particular task or that particular dive, whatever that's going to be. So it was really about distilling that 10 years of experience, let's say, into that one comprehensive idea.
We have had a lot of feedback now. It's been, more than 7 years of the continually getting improved as well, the online training. But we get many instructors, but also divers commenting on them using the materials. And sometimes, they get a subpar course, right? Something that didn't quite give them what they wanted or whatever might happen. But they only really realize that through watching some of the online training maybe we have. And then it can kind of better educate you to make more informed choices for an instructor in the future, and so on. So I think one of the things I have to answer is, well, if I bought your online training series, Steve, should I come and see you still? Right? And to a degree, I might never get to meet you if you're in a different part of the world and we don't get together. I'm sure you can apply what you're learning through there and become a pretty competent diver, or even use them to work with your local instructor, right? But what can I do for you when I see you? I guess the real answer is, because a lot of the things are covered in you watching the materials, I can really focus on what I believe a real instructor's job is, which is to get wet, and during the water time is to fast track your learning curve, right? Show you how to do skills more efficiently, catch problems that you have, and help you with that exact problem at that time. You know, it's pointless for me to keep showing people how to set a harness up and do this. Yeah, of course I can do bits, but if a video covers it better than I can live, better they watch the video.
Yeah, and of course it just accentuates the value of instructor time as well, because as you say, even if they've set it up following the video and they made a couple of errors in setting it up, or there's a couple of things that could be improved, that's a very easy and quick fix on a course as opposed to starting from scratch, as you said.
For us, we see it as multiple benefits. You can prepare the student for the course. You then have a reference material for after the course. Mm-hmm. You have some interest for people that are looking to get into side mount diving. And then hopefully with some of the instructor stuff, we're showing how we teach our courses and why we think certain things are good. So we kind of see that there's multiple benefits to it. Yep. And it's not just aimed at, that diver on that course for that week.
The evolution has been really interesting to watch as well, because it started out as really the side mount series. And I think there was a technical series with it as well, but let's focus on side mount. And then you got to the point where you made the instructor series. And I thought that was a really interesting decision, because obviously you're instructors. And so what you're now doing is passing on your instructor knowledge to others, now educating instructors and giving them something that they can follow and reference. And obviously sometimes I guess there's a bit of a double-edged sword with that, where you think, well, maybe I'm giving away business here. So what was the thought process with that in terms of giving away the secret sauce of your courses?
Yeah, we have discussed that quite a few times, actually. I guess it's kind of a tricky one, but I always said that actually we're personally not struggling for work, right? When we promote a course, it generally gets filled pretty quickly, actually. And, the nature of the fact that we're consistently developing these materials now means that I'm probably doing less, I'm not working every day as a dive instructor anymore. Of course, I'm still running enough courses, one for my own enjoyment to give students a chance to train, and also help get the resources we need and keep on top of it for our online training.
There's the philosophy behind it, which I didn't buy into at first. And, why do we become instructors? It's to help divers dive safer, have a higher skill level. Well, what's the best way to do that? If we teach one course, you help one diver. One online series, you could reach, let's say, 1,000. But if you could teach 10 instructors who each teach 100 courses, well, now it's a multiplier. So if we're attempting to improve diver education, well, you have to attack it all the way along the chain, don't you? And I think, you can answer the question for yourself, Steve. I mean, no one will quite run a course the way you run it. Your personality, your style, what you know, what you're adding, what you've learned in this place and that place. So you actually can't be replaced. Now, the standards you're following or making sure that are adhered to, yes, they're written in lots of different textbooks, but the way that you apply that's unique to you. So if you taught someone to teach, they would never teach the course in exactly the same way. And that's why your students are coming to you.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And a few things that come to me there is, who teaches the teachers? And a lot of what we see around the world is not great quality side mount instruction, let's be fair. So having a great reference that instructors can refer to is awesome. And yes, it will grow the industry, as you say, and produce better side mount divers. But you've made a really good point there too, which is basically your unique selling proposition as an instructor is you. It's what you bring to the table. Yeah. And yes, it's all of the nuts and bolts of how you teach a course and how you structure it and how you teach skills and improve divers. But as you say, it's very much you and the personality you bring and the fun that you can make it for students. And I guess at the end of the day, how good your students are. And I think this again is the value in your instructor series is by being able to reference very high quality instructor materials like that. It only makes my course and other instructors' courses better. And we can focus more on the parts that are unique to us, as you mentioned.
It was quite a good place to put the extra material. And what I mean by that is, whenever we explain something to a student, you always try and do a good job, right? But sometimes you probably overdo it for that person. I mean, it might suit some learning styles, but maybe it was just too much information for the others. So, and then you think to yourself, well, actually, we're saying so much. I mean, who'd really benefit from that? And it's probably the people who are doing the same job or trying to help other people learn. So that, again, feeds into the instructor component part, right, of how, well, when you're doing that SMB skill, where do you position the diver? Where the instructor should be positioned so everyone can see? Should anybody hang on to the SMB? How close is the instructor? And, the list goes on and on and on.
I can ask you the question, Steve. I mean, if it was anything like me, you finish your IDC, great, everyone's happy, and now you get your first course, whatever that course is, and it's go, do it. How much in your IDC actually trained you to run that course, organize the logistics, decide what to do first, what to do second, how to handle that. We didn't learn all of that stuff. And so that's what I got interested in the gap that I would perceive in instructor training. That was why I was interested to become a trainer and then see, well, what I could do about that. And that was really the whole idea behind it. If we'd had something like this when I was, it would have helped, right?
Oh, man. Would have made a world of difference, wouldn't it? Yeah, for sure. And the evolution has carried on, and I'm not sure what came next. Was it the Intro to Sidemount series that came after this?
Yeah, I think the Intro to Sidemount was kind of something Vas was kind of pushing me or asking me about for a while, because, it was that giving someone a taster, wasn't it? We try and do enough in the free course to give people enough understanding of what it is we're actually doing, right? How our online training materials maybe are different from the agencies or other people out there. And if it's free, well, you're going to likely go on there and take a bit of time and work that out, right? So go ahead and do it. But then there come a point where it's a bit like, well, if someone can't really afford to spend the money fully on the Sidemount course, could we give them more of an intro one, get them started, and then that money would come off the full course. So actually, it's a bit of a win-win, isn't it, for them, because they're getting to taste something else. And I kind of said, all right, it's a good idea. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a question maybe for you and your listeners, for them to know, what are the objections that people have got, to buying other materials. I mean, when we sign up for an agency course, we're arguably forced to buy the agency materials. Now, you've seen them, I've seen them. And sure, there's things that maybe they don't include or things that you could add. But I always imagine in the mindset of a diver, they've already paid their money for their course. Why should they buy something else? So what we're trying to do is make it easier for people to see what we've got. Why would it help them, give them a taste of what's in there? So, it's the equivalent of giving you a 6-month trial and seeing for yourself, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, some people do struggle with the money side and that sort of thing as well. It depends on your personal situation. So great to give them a stepping stone into it. And sometimes you're not sure even that Sidemount's for you. I get quite a few people saying, I'm not sure if I want to do Sidemount or not. Yeah. I'd love to give it a try. And I think it might be good, but you're not sure. Not everyone can jump in, boots and all, right from the very beginning. So I think that's a great add.
We did a little bit of maths earlier, Steve, on that point. We worked out in our Sidemount course, we've got 30 hours of content. And then depending on the contact time you'd get in the water, that's something like a 6-day program. Mm-hmm. At the moment, we've got the free whiteboard add-on, the Essentials add-on, which is like another 8 hours or something. And what we realised is that you're paying for a half-a-day training, but getting 8 days worth of video and lessons to watch. So in terms of the ratio, we felt it was competitive at least. If you're going to take that 5-day program, but you get an extra 8 days, on top of that, if you like.
It actually doesn't really make sense. Should it be priced at 10 times the price? Honestly, it should. But we live in a world where, it is what it is, the online training and everything, the way it works. I do have probably at least 10 people, I would say now, that it's really funny. It comes up to renewal time and they're always buying the new stuff, but the renewal comes up. And the renewals are about 20%, say, of the original cost. But they refuse to pay the renewal fee and they want to pay full price again. So I kind of have to make like a weird coupon for them so they can not have the discount and buy it at full price. It's crazy, but that's just because they value maybe what's in there and the work that goes into it, right?
There are some amazing people around like that. I have patrons for Speaking Sidemount, and some of them just the positive comments about what you do and how much they appreciate it. And of course, it's balanced against it. They're not the majority, I promise, and I'm sure you know that too.
but it's balanced against the ones who will only take it if it's free. You know, that's just the way of the world and the way the internet has grown over time, I guess.
But also, I mean, no instructor ever tells you how hard their day is, right? No one hears that. So when someone tells you you've done a good job, they write to you and they thank you for your effort, and we get the same. Yeah. I mean, you know you're doing something. Yeah. And that's like those nice little treats along the way if you want.
It's gold. So you opened up the whiteboard series, and I am super interested in that because as comprehensive as the rest of the material is, the whiteboard series takes it to a whole new level, right? It's almost like sitting in a complete class with you. So I'm really interested in the thinking behind delivering that on top of what is already there.
I'm ashamed to say it happened by accident. There wasn't a lot of thinking initially about it. It came from teaching multiple courses and finding that you're having to explain the same things over and over. And I started to run into a problem where when people are coming for, let's say, level 2, they're missing things at level 1. So they didn't have precision buoyancy, didn't have a good understanding of whatever the thing is. So, you know, I've got a mobile board. I'm not a big classroom guy. I'd rather sit outside, sunshine, whatever it is, back of the truck, you know how it goes. And just do a little sketch, draw a little arrow, and try and explain the point. Maybe you're balancing a pencil. You're doing whatever you're doing, and you're delivering that lesson. And I find myself doing that 10 times a year, 20 times a year, and I'm like, hang on. The same concept about doing the side mount instruction, and could we not help those guys? Yeah. Well, then, this doesn't apply to everyone. Not everyone needs to know this stuff, but if I could have people that already knew that, well, I could save my hour of explanation of where to move your ankles or where to move the weight or, you know, why does your breathing affect this? And
I did make Vas a challenge on that as well. And the challenge was that, you know, you have your other course like Advanced Nitrox Decompression Theory and Trimix Theory and all those things. Well, I'm not a huge theory guy, and people who've done courses will probably laugh when they hear that. Obviously, I do it enough, but it's true. If you're one of those people who loves all the calculations and everything, I learned what I had to learn and I passed on what I needed to, right? But you've got other people out there who love the textbooks and manuals, and I was honestly finding that people came to courses probably knowing more than I do about physics, physiology, and all the other things that you need to discuss, right? So my challenge to Vas, because I know he's from that background and he really likes it, the engineering and everything, was, look, if you're explaining the same things when you're running advanced nitrox decompression procedures and everything, why are you doing the same stuff every time? Let's make interactive whiteboard lessons where you've got drawings, but whenever you talk about something that somebody can visualize, don't ask them to think about it. Let's actually put a live video on the same whiteboard you're using now, an overlay, right? And they don't need to visualize, it's there, they can see it. It grew from there, didn't it? But my challenge was that, can you make enough whiteboard materials so you'd never need to prescriptively teach when you're doing those advanced nitrox decompression procedures and so on? And that's where it grew from. And I can tell you now, I mean, the official stats are like, there's 383 lessons currently live. That's over 60 hours of content. Now, that's only with one whiteboard module of the whiteboard, the series. We've got another 5 that we are halfway through final edits on. So they're already made, actually. The final edits are going in. It's a lot of review process. It's good there's 2 of us on it now because it's a lot of work. But there will be over 500 videos and over 80 hours of content by the end of the year. So, insane. You know, it's really gone insane,
It's an interesting point. I mean, it's one thing to read about, let's say, buoyancy, and we understand what the 3 states of buoyancy are, that's okay. But who really understands what their breathing does in that process? You know, why did they rise when they shot the SMB? You know, what do you do when you're going to make a depth change? So, you know, you take that basic idea and then you expand on that for the dive that you're going to go off and make. And it's the subtleties of all those small points. And I guess in a way, you know, we're always asking ourselves, why do they need to exist? Why aren't there other materials from, let's say, well-known diving agencies, let's say? We don't actually know the answer to that.
I've got an idea, but...
Well, what we'd really like to do is we would like to have some sort of open review process, or an independent person take the side mount course from agency A, one from agency B, you know, at least the materials side, then look at the video-based style that we're doing and have someone, you know, kind of objectively say, oh, that was good or that wasn't, and I'd give this one 6 out of 10 and this one however many out of 10. Yeah. Because that's the bit we're missing. And like I said, because there is a gap, because I haven't seen these things before. Well, I'm not sure we're the only two guys that have come up with the idea, but there's a gap for it and people like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it has a place now.
And I think the success of what you've done is really, you just hit the nail on the head. You found a gap in the marketplace and you found a need, and those two things combined together create a successful outcome in most cases. And then, of course, you've got to execute on that and do a good job. Certainly from my point of view, and I'm sure many others, it's just a fantastic resource. You talked about the money a fair bit too, and you've got to think about this clearly, and often people don't. If I took the amount of time that I struggled in those 2 years, 2013 to 2015, between California and Gozo.
Yeah.
Gozo was a watershed moment, and you know what it's like to turn up to Gozo Technical in that time, to see the level and standard of which you two were part of, but there were many others as well. Tom Steiner, obviously, and Audrey, and on it goes. So when I turned up there, having done about 200 side mount dives by that point, but having learned pretty much everything myself in terms of saltwater diving, steel cylinders, et cetera, to see that and to at least have progressed myself. Had I had a resource like what you've produced with sidemounting.com over that time, I would have turned up in much, much better shape and would have saved myself hours and hours and hours of time, effort, blood, sweat and tears in order to get to some semblance of good. I was okay when I turned up in Gozo, but within a week I was much better. So
of course.
I wasn't that far away, but it was just those fine little points, and then being able to watch really good people in the water and see how they set their gear up and see how they dived made all the difference. I can't think that if you are serious about your diving that you wouldn't invest in those materials to save yourself that time.
We do get that a lot, and in the reviews, if people read them on the site, that's what a lot of people say. They're like, honestly, I wish I got it sooner. And getting back to the day, everyone's time is valuable, right? Super valuable to them. And that's what kind of I think people miss a little bit, because they just wing it, and next week I'll go diving, I'll try that, and the week after I'll try this. And, weeks have gone by, you're missing out. Probably some other sports take priority now. Your diving suffers, which is not good. And you will, of course, with access to online training that really works, you're able to sit and watch it and, really, next time I go diving, I've got this checklist now. I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, I'm going to video record myself with this, and then I'm going to look back at my video and benchmark it against what they're showing, and let's see how close we are. And then later on, of course, when you get to an instructor, it's an easy process for you. A little bit like when we talk about cave divers. If you turn up with not much experience, we can probably teach you the cave course, but you're not going to see the cave. You're not really going to enjoy it too much because you're so busy with the equipment, adjusting and everything. If you were really skilled at buoyancy, trim, finning techniques, holding still, holding a light, now it's like, let's swim in that cave and you've got these skills to do. And it's like, well, I can see everything and you can do everything.
Yep.
That's a little bit like that light moment with the cave. That's honestly what people will find when they do the online training. It's really that simple.
Yeah. And you're talking about awareness now as well, and I have terms, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, which really refers to muscle memory in another parlance. So when you're consciously focused on trying to achieve something, your awareness narrows in really, really tightly on what you're consciously focused on. When that skill becomes muscle memory or subconscious, now your awareness can grow. I mean, a little bit like driving a car. I mean, who thinks about driving a car? Once you've been doing it for a few years, you end up somewhere you don't know how you got there. So it's all subconscious, and our subconscious mind is incredibly powerful. It can accomplish a lot of very routine tasks very, very simply. And then, of course, it frees up your conscious mind to focus on what needs to be focused on, which is your situational awareness, your team awareness, and so on. And so this is a really good thing, as you say, particularly for something like cave diving, where you're going into an environment which is inherently more dangerous, which inherently requires more skill, which inherently requires more conscious thought about what you're doing. Something as simple as back referencing a cave, for instance. How do you do that if you're focused on the line, my equipment, staying still, fin technique? All of that needs to be subconscious in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, Steve, but we've actually, believe it or not, I'm over at Vas's place now in London. We've spent the last 2 days already talking each other to death. I have a pad of paper over there full of notes, but this is mainly for this upcoming online cave series. So I can answer to people officially now. We are making something. Of course, we've got a lot of student footage already from all the past years. But then we kind of went back to the drawing board, a bit like with all the online training, and said, hang on, we need to do it seriously now. We need to get some people going through the entire program. So we've already found a lucky 8 people now.
That's right, yeah.
All booked on, ready. We've got, 4 in Mexico.
I saw the promo for that. I was almost tempted to put my hand up.
Yeah,
Come back and do it all again.
Actually, we're laughing at that, weren't we, Vas? You would not believe, honestly, we must have 15 people.
Half of the applicants.
Yeah, 15 or so people who are already fully certified cave divers said, I want to do it. And they didn't even really know what it was. But, I mean, it was going to be a full cave course, right? But we said, no, look, we need this to be a bit more realistic, and we need new people who've not dived before.
It's a good way to make your students look good, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it would have been easier, But no, so we're looking forward to that, and that'll be like, one of us actively instructing the course each day, and we'll stay as the instructor for that day, and then we'll switch roles where we mix it up a little, so the students are getting benefit from both of us live each day over the 10-day window, and one of us is doing all the recording that's needed as well, right? Not being involved with the active teaching.
What a great opportunity, not only for the students, but I think for you guys as well. I think you'll get a lot out of that personally, and in terms of, have your team taught cave courses before?
Just, I mean, it's been me more assisting Steve. So Steve has been teaching cave for longer than me, and so you know how it goes. You chatted to Tamara only a few weeks ago, so you know about the internship route. So, you have to put your hours in.
And so this is going to be a cave training series, so focused on the diver level to begin with?
That is kind of what we thought, but then we went a bit crazy and there's even more paperwork, because what we found is we started to write all the subjects down and expand them and how we might shoot them, what we might talk about. But then we had this other piece of paper that just kept growing with more information, questions that probably cave instructors will want to know, or the students who are really want more detailed information, more than you would get at maybe a student level. So it's probably going to be 2-part. There's going to be a whole one for the student and a whole level for the instructors as well. Yeah.
And on top of that, I mean, you've got the regional variations to think about, different procedures, different protocols, and it just did start to grow, sadly.
Yeah.
I won't push you for a time frame on this, but suffice to say you're working on it now.
So the majority of the extra things we need, because we're going to go to a few different locations, of course. We already have a lot of cold water locations shot as well with cave already from our own experience. So that's going to be interesting to add that in. Of course, we're well known for teaching out over in Mexico, and obviously you can run an extremely good cave course there because you've got all the caves suitable. You've been there, it's a fantastic place for it. But you've got the time as well, and that's the big thing I think a lot of people don't really get, is that to do a good job you need time, and time in the water. And the more time them students have, the better the results you can get. If you've got other places where you've got less time, you've got high flow, deeper water, colder water, it's harder to get the same results because you need more days, you need more time, and it's just a different process, right? Now, what I would like to say is you learn in the best environment that you can, which for me would be Mexico. Then you can take what you learn and apply that. That's a different story. You're already trained, competent. You put that dry suit on now, you get used to the cold water layers, and then you go back in the caves where there's cold water conditions. That's a different story. You're well prepared. You can enjoy that environment, that experience. Because I loved diving in Florida, in the flow and the DPVs, and better with the DPV. It was a great experience. But would I have liked to have learnt there personally, knowing what I know? No, maybe not. I would take the Mexico route and then that. But I mean, our series is really going to be aimed at what to do in all these different locations. So if you can't get to somewhere, don't worry. Our idea is this is how we might go about that particular skill you're going to learn, and how much time to invest into it and what to look out for. So we're going to try and make this definitely a worldwide suitable product, right?
And somewhere like Mexico, because it gives you the duration in the cave, you're not just going to test headline skills, let's do the mask thing, let's do the jump thing. You're actually going to test the divers in that dive for what might be a 2-hour dive. How are they performing? Do they switch off? What's their limit? You're testing their cave ability as much as all of these headline skills. And I think there is that distinction between, we can run a cave course by standards in all kinds of strange places, as long as you get the skills done. But, we don't want it to be just about that exercise. So again, it's
realistically, we're going to work hard on it. I hope to have quite a bit of stuff. The editing, of course, is nobody will really understand me, but it's a long time. To shoot the stuff and come out, download from the brain, that's one thing. To actually put it into editing, especially with the additional voiceovers or video overlays and other things we do.
We're talking about 20-to-1 ratio, 1 hour video, 20 hours to edit.
Easily, yeah, it could well be that. And then you've got the additional bit where if I do a lot of the edits, for example, Vas will spend time reviewing it because I can switch off from it a little bit. And then he's got a whole new outlook on, hey, you've got to change that, do this, and then it's another editing process. Then it gets reviewed again. Then we have subtitles made for it. Then we have chapters we've got to write. And that's just one video live, The job's huge, but we can't lower the standards now, right? We've got to keep them where they are and growing them.
Yeah.
I was curious about for you, Steve. I mean, you must spend quite a bit of time after these calls making these edits.
I do. In the podcast world, I do a lot of editing, much more than a lot of others do. And part of that is because I have a particular production standard that I want in terms of sound quality. And it is difficult in this format that I'm using where I'm interviewing people all around the world and I'm the victim of internet connections and microphones at the other end and rooms that they're in. And all of those sort of things. So there's some things that are difficult to control. The other big aspect for me is that a lot of my guests are not native English speakers. So a lot of Europeans, some from Asia and some from Mexico, though they tend to be really good. But when English isn't their first language, they tend to stumble a lot more. And that's no disrespect to them whatsoever. It's just, I'm very grateful that they're doing the interview in English versus their language because I'm hopeless at other languages, just to be blunt. So I try to make everyone sound great. And even the great Steve Bogarts, I mean, Steve. Yeah. Steve ums and ahs a lot. And if you listen to Steve's interviews, there's none of that in there. So he sounds incredibly eloquent. And he sounds eloquent anyhow because we naturally cut people breaks when we're listening to what they're saying. But there's a lot of ums and ahs in there. And I would say for me, it would be something not 20-to-1, but it would be something like 5 to 10-to-1 in terms of 1 hour of content is going to take me, it wouldn't be 5, it's about 10 hours of editing that I do to get that. And then there's the production work behind it and a little promotion and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure.
How many is it now, Steve, you have? What's the number?
You're going to be episode 95.
Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
95.
I've tried to get you in the first 10, Steve, I promise.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. But I mean, look, the time is always right when it's right, okay? And now we got together. I'm kind of happy because we're in a really solid place where we can say where we want to go with this and what we're trying to achieve now. Maybe back then it wouldn't have been as easy. And Vas is way more on board with everything now, since we went back to the drawing board or the whiteboard. That'd be a better way. Went back to the whiteboard.
Back to the whiteboard, yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this part 1 of a 2-part series with Steve Martin and Vas Proud on the online video training that they provide via sidemounting.com. I loved catching up with both Steve and Vas. It's been a long time since we've had the opportunity to speak, and it was awesome to be able to and fro with both of them on their materials, but also a lot on just general diving. Now, I want to once again encourage you to pop on over to sidemounting.com. Have a look at what they've got. I honestly do believe their materials, their online video training will help any Sidemount diver or instructor to improve their diving. Don't forget, I've negotiated a special offer for all listeners of Speaking Sidemount. You can get a 15% discount on any of the training materials if you contact me directly for an exclusive promotional code. Now remember, this offer is only available via Speaking Sidemount and again by contacting me personally via email to steve@sidemountpros.com. I'll put this in the podcast notes. Now, full disclosure again, along with your discount, Speaking Sidemount will also benefit financially from every purchase generated, which will contribute to the ongoing production of this podcast. Thanks again for your support. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in part 2 of my discussion with Steve Martin and Vas Proud. You've been listening to Speaking Sidemount from www.sidemountpros.com. If you like the podcast and would like to support the show, then why not become a patron of Speaking Sidemount? For as little as $5 per month, you can become a part of the Speaking Sidemount team, get exclusive early access to all of the episodes, and help us to deliver the very best Sidemount, cave, and technical dive content available. Just go to www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount for all of the details. The address is also on our Facebook page, listed in the podcast notes. Thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us for our next episode of Speaking Sidemount.